Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. What I want to do is two things, really. I want to talk a little bit about the, who homeless people are and how they have affected me. A sort of more personal story. And then the second part, I want to look at the analysis of homelessness, look at the government's response to homelessness, and sort of have some reflections on that. Today in Ireland we have more homeless people than at any time since the famine. And the reason why people are becoming homeless is often the very same reason as during the famine. People are being evicted from their rented accommodation because they can no longer afford to pay the rents. And in the famine days it was mostly foreign English landlords who were evicting Irish people. Today, increasingly, it's foreign landlords, institutional investors, vulture funds, which are evicting Irish people. So we've come a whole circle, and yet Ireland today is infinitely more wealthier than it was in the days of the famine, and we are still the 14th wealthiest country in the world. Anyway, homelessness, I began working with homeless people just by accident. I went into the inner city of Dublin in 1974 because the inner city of Dublin was then by far the most deprived area in the country. And I went in with two other Jesuit priests to see if we could make a difference. And it became very clear very quickly that working with young people was a priority. Young people were leaving school at the very latest by the age of 12. They were hanging around the streets all day long. Their parents were unemployed, couldn't give them any money. So what were they doing? A little bit of robbing. And by the time they got to 16 and 17, they were doing an awful lot of robbing and they were going to jail. So that was the issue. So we opened a youth club for young people. We opened a craft centre. They could make lovely crafts, sell them, make a few bob. We were able to employ some of the young people making the crafts. We could sell them to the shops. And then I came across a kid sleeping on the street, 9 years of age. So we said, gosh, we have a youth club, we have a craft centre, we have employment schemes, let's get a house and open a little hostel. So we did. We took in 6 boys. It was all boys then. There were no girls on the streets back in the 1970s hardly. So we opened a hostel for 6 boys up to the age of 16. And then I ran that for a couple of years. And then they were leaving that at 16, 16 and a half. And they were going back on the streets. So we opened a hostel for the over 16s. Then we had to open a hostel for the over 18s. Then the drug problem hit Dublin. So one thing just led to another. So from that 9-year-old kid, we now have 15 hostels. 4 of them are for young people under 18, and the others are for for adults, mostly young adults, but adults. We have about 160 apartments where we can give a homeless person a key to the door and say, this is yours for the rest of your life. You never ever have to return to homelessness. We have 2 drug treatment centres, we have a drop-in centre, we have a youth cafe. And that all came from one kid sleeping on the street. Anyway, who are homeless people? The public perception of homeless people is that they have a drug problem or an alcohol problem or a mental health problem. But they're in a minority. I can understand how that perception arises because they're the only homeless people you encounter. They're the ones you see down in Abbey Street or on the boardwalk. And most homeless people are invisible. We have homeless people in Trinity College. We have some in UCD. We have some in Maynooth. I think we've had some here, but not at the moment. 2 of our 17-year-old homeless people are just back from California. They were there on a sports scholarship trial, but they're invisible. Even if they were sitting here, you wouldn't know they were homeless. And so that perception persists. But the majority of homeless people don't. They're just perfectly like the rest of us with no major issues. The typical profile of homeless people now, a young fellow was, he had a part-time job, he was living in a flat, the rent was €950 a week. The landlord comes along and says the rent's going to be €1,300, can't afford to pay that rent from his wages, he gets evicted, he becomes homeless. Or we took in 2 brothers, 19-year-old, 21-year-old, they didn't take drugs, they didn't drink, they didn't smoke, they both had leaving certs, and they were sleeping on the street in sleeping bags when they were referred to us. And luckily we were able to. 55-year-old man, reared his children, always worked all his life, lost his job when the recession came, separated from his wife, left the family home, and he ended up in homeless hostels full of drug use. So that's the new profile of homeless people. Almost anybody could become homeless these days. If you're renting accommodation or you're paying a mortgage and you lose your job, you are in serious, serious danger of becoming homeless. Because you may well lose your home, you may well lose your rented accommodation, and unless your parents are willing to take you in, you're going to end up homeless. So that's the new profile of homeless people. But the problem is that the stigma of being homeless attaches to everybody. The perception is if you're homeless, there must be something wrong with you. And that attaches to everybody. Parents who are homeless will tell me that, you know, they feel ashamed at having to say they're homeless. They feel they have failed their children, that they are bad parents. And the children who are going to school won't tell their school friends that they're homeless because they're afraid they'll be slagged. So that perception persists. When it was suggested that some homeless families might relocate down the country, one provincial town said, no way, they're not coming here. We don't want Dublin's homeless here. And I felt like replying that maybe they'd lift the area up a little bit, but I resisted the temptation. So that's one of the big changes, is the profile of homeless people. So, however, some homeless people still do have a drug problem or an alcohol problem. They're the homeless people generally who are most damaged by their childhood experiences. Thinking of a young fella, he lived with his mother and his sister. Himself and his sister were very close together. His mother was an alcoholic, and when he was 12 years of age, his mother stabbed his sister to death in front of him. Now he just left home, we don't know where he was, for 5 years, sleeping on the streets of Dublin somewhere. Turned up at our door when he was 17, and he lived with us now for the rest of his life, because he now has serious mental health issues. Or a young fella, 14 years of age, every time he went home, his mother slammed the door in his face and said, go away, you're not wanted here. How do you cope with that? Well, you cope with that by taking drugs. Or a 12-year-old, his mother was a drug user. Every morning before he went to school, he had to go into town, buy the heroin his mother needed for the day, and he had to come back and help her to inject it because she couldn't get the needle into the vein, which happens when you're injecting a long time. So not surprisingly, by 15 he was injecting heroin and he was homeless. Or just finally, an 11-year-old knocked on my door late at night and said, can I stay? And I said, no, you can't stay, you're only 11, I said. And anyway, you have a home to go to. Can't go home, he said. Why can't you go home, I asked him. Just can't go home. Talked to him for a while, persuaded him to go home, put him into my car, drove him up to his house, said, there you are, in you go. Can't go in, he said. Why can't you go in, I asked him. Just can't go in. Talked to him for another little bit, discovered his alcoholic parents were sending him out every night into prostitution. He had to come back with a certain amount of money, otherwise he'd get a beating, and he had no money that night. So young people who have had horrific childhoods. Some of them take drugs. Why do they take drugs? They take drugs for a different reason why some of you guys have taken drugs. Young people today will take drugs out of curiosity, see what they're like, or out of peer pressure. But these young people take drugs to forget their childhood memories and to suppress the feelings that are associated with those memories, and drugs work. Best thing ever. They mask all your worries and cares. So they're taking drugs to forget. One young girl said it very poetically shortly before she died of a drug overdose, She said, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could run so fast that your memories couldn't catch up? So they're using drugs to come run away. So what happens when they come off drugs? When they come off drugs, all those memories and the feelings associated with them, they all come flooding back to the surface, and they come back with a vengeance. And you'd better be able to cope. One young man said, would you not think of giving up heroin? He said, when I stop taking heroin, I feel the pain too much. A young fellow who had been abused. Another young man came down to our detox centre, came off drugs, came back to Dublin, was doing very well until his granny died. Went to the funeral of his granny. There in the front row of the mourners, he found himself sitting beside the uncle who had abused him as a child. All the memories and feelings came back. And in the middle of that mass, and I was saying the mass, so I was up here at the altar, I saw him get up out of the bench. And he literally ran down the centre aisle of the church, out the front door, and the next day he killed himself. So for them, coming off drugs is hugely difficult. People look at them down in Abbey Street or in the boardwalk and say, why don't they stop taking drugs? It's not as easy as that at all. The drugs are only a symptom. They're only a symptom of much, much deeper problems that have never been addressed. And in order for them to come off drugs, they need all the counselling, the therapy, the support that we can give them. And so it's so that's the people we're working with, young people who are going to go on and have a very good life. They're going to go to Trinity College, get a degree, get a diploma, end up with a good job and a good home, down to other people who are severely damaged and for whom our work may largely be damage limitation. What have they done for me? I'm just going to say two things they've done for me. First is they've taught me never to judge anybody. We can never judge anybody because we don't know what's gone wrong in anybody's life or anybody's childhood. We had a guy living with us, he was 17, he was a big fellow, and every time the staff asked him to do something, he'd throw a punch at them. Staff came to me and said, get rid of this guy. This fella's off his head. We can't work with this. Somebody's going to get hurt. Throw him out. So I said, okay, I'll throw him out. But before I got around to throwing him out, I was talking to him on his own one day and he broke down crying. And he said, you know, in my home when I was growing up, it was do this, do that, or thump. You got punched around the house as if you were a punch bag. As soon as he said that, everything fell into place. When you asked him to do something, who did he see in front of him? He saw his own father in front of him. And he reacted the only way he knew how to react to his father. He threw the first punch before his father could get a punch in. And once we understood that, we were able to work with him. We didn't throw him out. He lived with us 3 or 4 years, and then he moved on to his own accommodation. But there was someone we could have written off because we didn't understand where he was coming from. This little phrase in the gospel, do not judge, and you will not be judged. I always thought that meant if you go through life not judging people, then when you die and go before God, God won't judge you. But I don't think that's what it means anymore. What am I doing if I were to judge one of those young people? If I were to say, there's a little scumbag, there's a little junkie robber, what am I doing? I'm actually judging myself. Because I know if I had been born into their circumstances, I would be exactly the same as them. And if they had been born into my circumstances, they would be the priest coming up to visit me in prison. I didn't choose the family I wanted to be born into. They didn't choose the family they wanted to be born into. It could so easily have been the other way around. And therefore I look at one of these homeless guys and maybe they're sitting in a corner stoned out of their face. Maybe they're out robbing to feed their drug habit. When I look at them, I see part of myself in them. Because there, but for the grace of God, go I. And the other thing I'd say is they've taught me what's the hardest part of being homeless. I always thought the hardest part of being homeless was not having a bed for the night, having to find a doorway or a derelict building or somewhere to sleep, but it's not. You can get used to that. It's not comfortable, but you can get used to it. And then I thought, well, it must be the being hungry and cold and penniless during the daytime. But it's not, to get used to that. And then I thought, it must be the boredom of every day, having nowhere to go and nothing to do. But it's not, to get used to that as well. What's the hardest part of being homeless? We had a guy live with us for a few years. When he was 18, he left us, went to live with his girlfriend. After about a year, they split up. And he went on to the streets because he had nowhere else to go. After a couple of months in the streets, he threw himself into the Liffey. To his dismay, he was rescued. He was brought to hospital. And I went up to see him in hospital. He said, Peter, he said, I can't go on living like this. And I said to him, what do you mean? And he said, I can't go on living knowing that nobody cares. And that's the hardest part of being homeless. To know if you disappeared off the streets of Dublin there, nobody would even know you were gone. Your life has no meaning, it has no value to anybody else. You have totally lost your self-esteem, you have totally lost your dignity. And so people say to me, what do you do for homeless people? I say, yeah, we can give some of them accommodation, we give some of them drug treatment, we can give some of them counselling, but what we're really trying to do is to give them the message that they are just as important and just as valuable as anybody else. And if we're not giving them that message, we may as well pack up and go home, because the rest isn't worth it. And how do you give them that message? Well, one way, most of our hostels are pretty nice places. They're bright, they're clean, they're painted, pictures on the walls. In most of our hostels, every homeless person has their own room. And in some of our hostels, all rooms are en suite. We have transition year students, 15, 16-year-olds. They spend a week in our drop-in centre. Just talking to homeless people has a huge impact on them. And what's happening there is they get behind the label, homeless person, drug addict, drug dealer, and they meet the real person. And they realise the real person, exactly the same as them, except their life has gone in a totally different direction through no fault of their own. But one of the things we do is we bring them around some of our hostels. And they're amazed at how nice they are. One young fella said, I'm going home to tell my mum I'm leaving home. Here. And we say that's deliberate, because what you offer to homeless people sends a message to them, and the message is so important. The message is, this is how we value you, this is what we think you're worth. So if you put homeless people, and some of the emergency hostels are like this, if you put homeless people into a rundown building, the paint's peeling off the wall, and you cram them in bunk beds, as many as you can get into the room, they're getting the message. And the message is, this is what society thinks you're worth. And so you could be offering somebody a bed for the night, but you're destroying their dignity, and they'd be better off sleeping on the streets. And the other way is small little ways. Just by giving people time. A lot of the time now, things are so bad now, and I'll come to that in a minute. Things are so bad now that most of the people coming into me in the morning, I can't do anything for them. They come in, they're looking for a bed tonight, they haven't had a bed the last 3 nights. And I'm saying, I'm sorry, there aren't any beds. But they might talk for 20 minutes, pouring out all their problems and their woes, and at the end they'll go away often saying, well, thanks anyway for listening. The very fact that you bothered to listen, that you took the time to listen, and what they had to say was important enough to you, that meant something to them. So little tiny ways just of respecting people and of acknowledging them as being of the same value and dignity as the rest of us. People sometimes say to me, should you give money to people who are begging? And I say, look, I don't know. Sometimes I think you should, sometimes I think you shouldn't. But there's something you can do that's more important than giving money. When you pass by, say hello. Now what's that doing? Imagine sitting in O'Connell Bridge or begging. Actually, if you're ever stuck for your fees and you need to beg, O'Connell Bridge is a good place to beg. Because Store Street Garda Station covers the north side of the city, Pearse Street Garda Station covers the south side of the city, and they can't agree on who's responsible for O'Connell Bridge. So, anyway, you're sitting there, there's thousands of people passing you by. Where are they all looking? Anywhere except at you. They're looking down at their feet, they're looking at the horizon, or they're looking the other way. They won't look at you. You're sitting there, thousands of people passing you by as if you were invisible. How does that make you feel? That makes you feel like a non-person. So if somebody just goes up and says, hello, how are you? What's your name? What are you doing? You're treating them as a person. And I said that to a group of women once, and a few weeks later a woman came up to me and said, I heard what you said at that talk, and I decided to try it. So I was walking along with my little 3-year-old son, we saw a guy begging. So I gave my son €2, and I said to him, now I want you to go up and put that in the cup in front of that man sitting down up there. So up she went, said, hello, how are you? Freezing cold, how's business? A little bit of small talk, And then she said, look, my son has something he wants to give you. And the little fellow went up and put the €2 into the cup. And the homeless man put his hand in his pocket, and he took out a Mars bar. And he said, and I have something I want to give your son. Now what was he responding to there? It wasn't the €2, though he still made a profit. But it was the fact that he was treated as a human being. And that's what I buy. People would say to me, I won't give him money, I'll buy him a sandwich. And I say, the last thing in the world you should do is buy him a sandwich. How do you know they want a sandwich? And maybe 10 people in the last hour bought them a sandwich, and they're sick of sandwiches. Why don't you go up and ask them what they'd like? And it's the asking that's important. And maybe they'll say, and probably they'll say, well, actually I prefer the money. I said, why not give them the €2 you were going to spend on a sandwich? And then they'll say, but they're only going to spend it on drugs. I say, so what? If you have a drug problem, you have a drug problem. And you're going to get your drugs tonight, one way or the other. And I say, isn't it better they beg for their drug money than go out and rob some old lady's handbag? So I have no problem giving somebody €1 or two, even though I'm fairly sure they may be going to spend it on drugs. So that's the personal side of the work that I do. Looking maybe more analytically now at the problem of homelessness. As I say, there have been 4 big changes in the last few years. One has been the profile. I've already dealt with that. Almost anybody today can become homeless. If you're renting accommodation, or if you're paying a mortgage and you lose your job, you are in serious danger of losing the place you're living in, and you become homeless. Or anybody who's sharing accommodation. If you're sharing accommodation with your parents, or you're sharing accommodation with your partner and that relationship breaks down, unless you know somebody else is going to take you in, you're going to end up homeless. So homelessness really is affecting a huge proportion of the population. But anyway, the first big change has been the numbers. We have about 7,000 homeless people registered at the moment in Ireland. But probably the true figure is closer to 10,000. Because many homeless people don't register. They're sofa surfing. They're staying on friends' floors. And they don't register as homeless because they don't want to go into the hostels, which are full of drugs. There are also a whole lot of non-new communities who are homeless. And they're accommodated by a different system, and they're not counted, and they're not registered. And there's all those people who are sleeping rough. They're not registered as homeless. So probably the figure is closer to 10,000. Every single day this year, 7 new people have become homeless. That's the scale of the problem. Second big change is families. 2012, about 7 or 8 families a month were becoming homeless. In 2013, that jumped to 20 families a month. In 2014, it jumped to 40 families a month becoming homeless. In 2015, it jumped to 75 families a month becoming homeless. And so far this year, it has averaged 85 families a month becoming homeless. The numbers are just going up and up and up. So at the moment, there's about 1,200 families registered as homeless, living in B&Bs and hotel bedrooms, with about 2,000 to 200 or 300 children between them. And it's an appalling situation. And the tension, all living, we know a family, father, a mother, a 19-year-old boy, a 21-year-old boy, and 3 younger children, all living in one hotel bedroom. The tensions, the stresses, the pressures on everybody is awful. You know, if one of the parents is working and they have to get up at 6 in the morning to go to work, the whole bedroom is awake. And if he has to go to bed at 10 o'clock at night, the whole bedroom has to go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. It's absolutely, kids then are stressed out. They can't study properly in school. It's damaging those children psychologically, emotionally, and educationally. Focus Ireland have called it a child welfare crisis. So the first is the numbers, second is the number of families, the third is the profile, and the fourth is that homelessness today is accompanied by hopelessness. Because people see no way out. Single people are going on an endless circle of hostel to hostel to hostel, year after year. And families who are in hotel bedrooms have no idea when they're actually going to be able to get out of there and get into a proper home. How did this all arise? It all goes back, it's nothing to do with the recession. This all happened, this all began to take off during the Celtic Tiger years, when we had more money than we knew what to do with. You know, in 1975, in this country, we built 8,800 social houses. And in 1985, we were in the middle of a recession in 1985, we still built 6,500 social houses. And then during the Celtic Tiger years, a decision was made for ideological reasons that social housing should be provided by the private sector. And that meant particularly the private rented sector. And so they stopped building social housing. And during those Celtic Tiger years, as I say, when we had more money than we knew what to do with, the number of new social houses coming on stream dropped to 1,790 per year. And you know how many social houses we built last year in this country? 75. So it's the failure to keep a stock of social housing that has led to this situation where families who are homeless or on low incomes are forced into the private rented sector. And of course the private rented sector can't cope. So the rents are going, the demand has outstripped supply, the rents are going through the roof, and so the people who are most affected, the ones who are not going to get accommodation, are those who are either on social welfare payments or on low wages. So if you go now to look for a flat, you'll find 25 other people outside waiting to view it. And it's an auction politics now. The flat might be advertised as $1,200 a month. Somebody will come along in the queue and say to the landlord, I'll give you $1,250. And somebody else in the queue overhears them and says, I'll give you $1,300. Homeless people have no hope in that sort of auction politics. So it started. The only solution to it is to build social housing. But there's a great reluctance on the part of government to do that. There are some categories of people who are particularly vulnerable to homelessness. One is children leaving care. You grow up in care, on your 18th birthday you may be kicked out of the residential placement you're in. We had one guy kicked out on his 18th birthday. He had no money, no accommodation or anything. Again, luckily we were able to take him in. Otherwise, he'd have been gone into homeless adult services. He'd have been placed in a hostel full of drug users, possibly even drug dealers who are pushing him to take drugs. And very quickly he would have descended into a culture of crime, of drugs, and eventually into prison. Second category are people leaving prison. Every single day people are being thrown out of prison because their sentence has ended and they've nowhere to go. I meet them, I spend my weekends in prison, I meet them when they're in prison, they're coming to the end of their sentence, delighted to get out, and 4 weeks later I meet them in Cloverhill Remand Prison. They're back again. And they say, look, I got out to nothing. I had £5 in my pocket for my bus fare into town. I had no accommodation or rent. I had nothing to do all day. I'm back in exactly the same cycle that I was in before I came into prison. How is anybody surprised that I'm back in prison again? And refugees, you know, the last count, I'm not sure what it is now, but last time I inquired was about 2 years ago, there were 600 people in the direct provision centres who had been granted refugee status. But they couldn't move out because they couldn't find accommodation. So the problem we have today is beyond crisis. In my view, it's out of control. What's the government doing? Well, the government have introduced, in July, they introduced a new housing and homeless action plan. And we've had several of those before, which never worked. This one is the best we've seen. It's the most detailed, it's the most comprehensive, but it's not radical enough. In my view, 3 things should happen. We have to interfere with the right to private property if we are going to address this problem of homelessness. The first is that banks are evicting people from their homes whenever they repossess those homes. We were dealing with one family. They were in a rented accommodation. The landlord couldn't pay the mortgage. A home was repossessed by the bank. They were evicted. And 2 years later, they passed their former home and it was still boarded up and empty. And that's immoral, whatever about being legal. So I would be advocating legislation to prevent the banks from evicting people, especially families, until they have secured alternative accommodation. Now, the banks don't like that, and the government don't like it. Don't like it either, because they fear that if the capitalisation of the banks drops, then the government may have to step in with taxpayers' money, or indeed that the banks who owe the taxpayer money, the government wants the banks to get as much money as possible so that they can repay the government for the taxpayers' money that was put into rescuing the banks in 2008. And of course the banks get more money if they sell an empty house than if they sell a house with people actually continuing to live in it. The second piece of legislation I would look for, if you go around Dublin, anywhere around Dublin, you'll see lots and lots of empty buildings boarded up. There are 186,000 all around the country. Now the government is giving grants to people who own those to bring them back into use, and some people will accept those grants, but a lot of people won't. One, they don't want to become landlords. Two, the grant may not be enough to bring it back up to standard. A lot of people won't be interested. I would compulsorily purchase them. If the person who owns them isn't going to be able to, or doesn't want to bring them back into use, then I would compulsorily purchase them. So we need some radical legislation, and that's unlikely to come from a Conservative government. What the minister's plan will make a difference, but it'll be in the medium to long term it will make a difference. It won't solve homelessness, but it may reduce the problem of homelessness. To date, we haven't seen any reduction. Month after month after month, the numbers are going up and up and up. So, am I optimistic? No, I'm very pessimistic. And what makes me even more pessimistic, and I'll stop there, is there are 50,000 houses and apartments in mortgage arrears of more than 2 years. Almost all of those are unrepayable. And the banks themselves estimate that 25,000 of those are going to be repossessed. Every house that's repossessed is potentially a household plunged into homelessness. Not everyone will become homeless. Some families might go and live with their parents. Some families might emigrate to Australia. But every house that is repossessed is potentially a household plunged into homelessness. So if we have a huge problem today, the problem we're going to have in 5 years' time is going to be much, much worse, unless the government takes the radical actions that are necessary to prevent it. The other radical actions, sorry, I forgot to mention, they have to bring in rent controls. Rents are going through the roof. As I say, landlord came along, young fella paying $950, tells him it's going to be $1,300. We've got to introduce rent controls which allows landlords only to increase the rent in line with the rate of inflation or the consumer price index. Government aren't going to do that. They don't like doing that. Why not? Because they want the big international investors to come in and control the private rented sector. Already we have a big Canadian company, Irish REIT. They now own 2,400 residential properties, and their aim is to own 5,000. And the government thinks bringing in these big international investors will make the rental sector more professional, and it will make it more stable. And they're right, it will. But these big international investors are not interested in people on low incomes. They're interested at the top end of the market. The Intel employees who could pay $2,400 a month for their rented apartment. That's what they're interested in. So the government they believe if they bring in rent control, it will discourage these big international investors from coming in and purchasing up the rental market here that's in difficulties. So we're unlikely to see those radical measures from government, and therefore it seems to me we're unlikely to see very much of a dent in homelessness in the foreseeable future. So I'm going to stop there and just, we've only a few minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, just to invite people, anybody might want to ask a question, make a comment, criticise anything I've said, or share your own experience, whatever, anything anybody wants to say.
Is there any chance you can revert back to the county council, give them back the position where they used to build the houses, deprivatise? I don't know.
Well, the county council are the ones who have to build the houses. Now, I don't know what's happening at the moment, but I know under the last government, Alan Kelly used to tell me, look, I'm giving the local authorities all the money they want to build houses. And then you go to the local authority and they say, yes, he has promised us so much, but we haven't seen it yet. So I don't know where the truth lay, but they weren't getting the money to buy, to build social housing. At least they were saying they weren't getting the money to build. Local authorities don't want social housing. I mean, they have had problems with the Tallahs and the Ballymuns, with antisocial behaviour. Now, my argument is the antisocial behaviour and the problems that arose in the Tallahs and the Ballymuns was not due to social housing. It was due to social housing with very few services and facilities. That's what created the problems. So, but they're very reluctant to start building a lot of social houses again. And so even though the minister is saying I'm allocating money for you to build social housing, local authorities are very, very slow to act on it, I think. But I was up in Derry recently, and Derry has a population of 100,000, about 2% of the population of the Republic of Ireland, and they were building 1,000 social houses on the outskirts of Derry. And of course the other problem the local authorities have, if they try to build social housing, everybody's going to be protesting. Everybody who lives anywhere near them is going to be out picketing. Local authority has to deal with all this. The councillors who vote for those social housing have to be re-elected. It's a nightmare.
Do you not think so that they make houses here, improper houses, and then they break them that and they make the same houses like the Dolphin Barn flats? I was looking, they were made and now they're breaking and making the same flats rather than expanding the projects. They're redoing all the flats that they have already been made already.
Well, the housing in the Dolphins Barn flats is appalling. They have to be renovated. They're not livable in as they are at the moment. They have run down so badly that they really do have to be renovated. So whatever money they have for that area is going into regeneration. And I would agree with that. You can't put up lovely houses beside flats that are uninhabitable. So they have to balance what the money they have between renovating what's available and building new ones.
Just want to give money on the streets that are begging. What if you were against, like you were saying that you'd rather give them money if it was to go towards drugs than not give them anything at all? What if you could, because I wouldn't be comfortable giving somebody money if I knew, but
Sure.
I don't know, I have the idea, that's the idea I go by.
Sure.
Well, I'd rather buy them something. But what if they say, oh, I want the money?
Well, I respect your position, and a lot of people are in your position. I spend my 24/7 with drug users. They're going to get their money one way or the other. So I respect somebody who decides I'm not going to rob for my drugs. I'll try and tap it, as they say. But I respect other people who say, no, I'm not going to help them to feed their drug habit. You want to buy them something? I have no problem with you buying something, but please, would you go up and ask them what they'd like? That's the key. And it's the question that you're treating them as a human being. You're treating them with respect. You're saying, what would you like? I'm not going to decide what you want. You tell me what you would like and I'll get it for you. And they might say a cup of coffee, or they might say a sandwich. They might say, will you get me a McDonald's? Or they might say, give me the money. If you go up and ask them what they would like, then realistically you have to do that. If they say, I prefer the money, you can't just say, no, I'm not giving you the money, and walk away. If you ask them, what you're saying is, I respect you as a person. I'm happy to give you something that you want, And actually you're respecting their dignity by giving them the money without making conditions as to how they're going to spend that money. That is respecting their dignity, in fact, as a human being. So, but it's I can understand people's reluctance to give money to people who are begging. Yeah.
Do you think this is a Dublin exclusive problem, or is it countrywide?
It's primarily in Dublin. Of the 7,000 people who are homeless, who are registered as homeless, probably over 6,000 are in Dublin. Now, Cork has a growing problem, Limerick has a growing problem, Galway has a growing problem, the cities have a growing problem, and indeed other towns have smaller problems, but it is primarily an urban problem. And it's primarily a Dublin problem because it's in Dublin where the demand for private rented accommodation is far, far greater than the supply, which means the rents are increasing faster in Dublin than anywhere else. And people are, the supply of accommodation available compared to the demand is so low. So it is primary, the concentration of the problem is in Dublin, but it's not exclusively.
We're going to have to relocate people to the country, spread out that.
Well, most people are not going to relocate. You know, if you're a single parent of 2 children, you want to live maybe close to your granny because she can mind the kids, give you a night out or let you go to education. Maybe your friends live within a reasonable bus ride. If you go down the country, you're going to be very isolated. You're going to have nobody, and you're going to end up on antidepressants in no time. So it's not a realistic option for a lot of people.
I'm just wondering what it is that sustained you, because even listening to all those years, you've been coming here with a great sense of humour, but there obviously is something else that keeps you on this road. I mean, it's been a hard road, and your inspiration to see your work.
But I always say if I ever stop doing this, they might send me back teaching. So, no, what sustains you is the relationship you build up with homeless people. The little you can do for them means a lot to them. And they do appreciate it, and they do show their appreciation. And that's worth doing, even if you can't solve their problems. Just treating them people with respect, they really do appreciate that. They come into our drop-in centre, and it's a happy place to be. Everybody's treated with respect. Nobody's looking down on anybody else. Nobody's judging anybody. It's they just feel comfortable there, you know. So the little things you can do like that mean a lot. And we do something. I mean, we're opening. I think it's another 90 places for homeless people between now and Christmas. We're opening an emergency hostel for 70 on Friday. We're opening 5 apartments down in Limerick. We're opening a couple of places in Clane and a few more places in Dublin. So we're increasing the options open to some homeless people all the time. That's worth doing. So tonight we'll have 752 homeless people staying with us. If we pulled out and gave up, they'd be back on the street. You can't do that, you know.
How is the McVerry Trust funded? Is it just to donations, or?
No, we budget this year 15 million. We get 10 million from the government, and we have to fundraise 5 million. So we have a lovely little fundraising committee, and they do sponsored walks and sponsored runs and golf outings and gala dinners, and we have a gala dinner every year. It started a few years ago in the Clontarf Castle Hotel. It looked like a good deal, so we booked it, and everybody came, and the fellow who owns the hotel said to us, how much do you expect to make? And we said 50 or 60,000. And he said, well, look, I'll give you all this for nothing. You can have the dinner for nothing, you can have the drinks for nothing, you can have the band for nothing. Every penny you take in is going to be pure profit for you. So, not surprisingly, we've gone back there every year since. And he's done the same thing, yeah. So we do a lot of fundraising, yeah. We beg, borrow, and
lovely note of partying. And just to say a sincere thanks to Peter for being so faithful to us here in IT Tallaght and for inspiring us. I think the stories are amazing and they all touch us. So thank you, Peter, and blessings
Pleasure.
on your
Thank
work.
you very much for coming.